Good afternoon and welcome to another exciting match in the 2026 staging of the public sector debate competition. We are absolutely delighted to have you here with us at our offices at the Saxthorpe Avenue, and we're just as thrilled to welcome our online audience. I am Tomika Gunmighty, Communication Specialist here at the Transformation Implementation Unit. If you are just joining us, no worries. You can catch up and stay up to date with all the action by subscribing to our YouTube channel at TIU_Jamaica. If you've missed our matches, this morning we had with us the National Fisheries Authority and the National Environment and Planning Agency, the Jamaica Customs Agency, the Accountant General's Department, the Ministry of Agriculture and the Teaching Service, as well as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade and the Magotty High School. Continuing the action this afternoon, we have with us the Administrator General's Department and the Ministry of Health, and they will be debating the moot. Be it resolved that the government should prioritize investment in high-value crops, example, coffee, cocoa, and banana, over investment in a more diversified agricultural sector. I repeat, be it resolved that the government should prioritize investment in high-value crops, example, coffee, cocoa, and banana, over investment in a more diversified agricultural sector. Very exciting mood. We ask, before we begin, that our proponents, the Administrator General's Department, start off the introductions.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Lewis, first speaker for the proposition.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justine Rodney, and I am the second speaker for the proposition.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Cudian King, and I am Team Proposition Reply Speaker.
Thank you to our team from the Administrator General's Department. We now turn our attention to the team from the Ministry of Health and Wellness as they introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Omalora Wilson, and I'm the first speaker on the opposition.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dean Beezer, second speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tafari Hilton, and I'm the reply speaker.
Thank you so much to Team Ministry of Health and Wellness. Now, today's adjudicators or team or partners from the Jamaica Association for Debating and Empowerment, we ask them to introduce themselves.
Thank you very much, Tomika. Hi, everyone. I'm Jermaine Barrett. I'll be the chair adjudicator for this match. Best of luck to both teams.
Hi, everyone. Kaliseti Vasa. I'll be serving as a wing adjudicator. All the best.
Hi everyone, my name is Jerome Reynolds and I'll also be serving as a wing adjudicator. All the best everyone.
Thank you so much to our team of adjudicators. Congratulations already to both teams for making it to the octafinals. They are both familiar with the rules from the previous rounds. Our judges will explain a little further. All the best to both teams.
Thank you again, Tomika. And to our viewing audience, you might be unfamiliar with the rules, so we'll go through them for your sake. So each team having 3 debaters. The first debater will speak for 7 minutes, the second for 6, the third and final debater will speak for 5 minutes. After the first 2 speeches, that's after first opposition speaker, we'll have an exciting period of cross-examination. We'll have another such period after the second pair of speakers deliver their presentation. Thereafter, we will have a 1-minute pause, following which we'll go to the reply speakers, beginning with that from the opposition team. Thereafter, we'll have the proposition team's reply speech to conclude the debate. Debaters, please be mindful of the time signals. The first and last minutes are indicated by a ding of a bell. In between those 2 in between those signals, you are very much encouraged to accept points of information. And of course, that only applies to the first two speakers. For the third and final speaker on each team, no points of information are allowed. All right? Teams, are you ready? Yes. All right, so without any further delay, I call upon the first speaker from Team Proposition, Administrator General's Department, to open this debate. Hear, hear.
Today, this House is being asked to make a decision about national development, economic strategy, and the future direction of Jamaican agriculture. The moot before us reads, be it resolved that the government should prioritize investment in high-value crops over investment in a more diversified agricultural sector. Madam Chair, fellow debaters, esteemed audience and adjudicators, good afternoon. I rise to affirm side proposition's firm commitment to the moot, to building and solidifying brand Jamaica. This debate is not about suggesting that diversification has no value. As proposition, our burden is simply to highlight that when resources are limited, investment must be concentrated where Jamaica has the greatest comparative advantage, the greatest export potential, and the greatest opportunity for transformative economic return. Let us reap from what works. Allow me to define the key terms of this debate. To prioritize is to decide which of a group of things are the most important to deal with first. High-value crops refers to those that generate significantly more income per unit area than traditional crops. For us, these are coffee, cocoa, ackee, and ginger. To diversify is to increase the variety of products offered. We will quantify our investment in an 80-20 ratio. 80% of our budget to high-value crops and 20% to other initiatives. Mr. Speaker, today we are farmers. Let us clear the land to prepare the field. In Jamaica's current reality, diversification has yielded ineffective results. The aim of diversification of the production of agricultural goods was initially to boost self-sufficiency, food security, promote exports, and reduce risk in the sector. Instead, it has derailed the true vision of Jamaica's 2030 plan for agriculture of upgrading farming from a subsistence level of activity into sustainable commercial success. There are different ways of diversification, but no matter the method, these disperse state investment across numerous low-yield sectors that struggle to scale. Diversification has also driven us further away from food security as a nation. Food security relies on 4 pillars to be true: availability, access, utilization, and stability. The truth is, several factors are driving changes in the demand for food. The human population in 2050 is estimated to reach 9.55 billion, according to the UNPD, with most of the increase projected to take place in developing countries. By spreading the resources of our small island developing nation with limited arable land, we have stunted growth. We must now shift to invest strategically, dominate where we have simply participated. Prioritizing high-value crops in such a time as this places Jamaica in a position to meet growing demands of its food security and the demands of the globe in a way we have not yet explored in its entirety. Now let's plant the seed and make it germinate to meet global demands. High-value crops generate superior economic returns and foreign exchange earnings. The CEO of JACRA has agreed that Jamaican cocoa, particularly fine flavor cocoa, occupies a niche global market where demand consistently exceeds supply. We have in our hands premium products. So instead of the government subsidizing industries with weak export potential, inconsistent profitability, and limited global differentiation, turning attention to high-value crops creates significantly greater returns per acre, greater export value, and greater opportunities for value-added production, such as chocolate, cocoa butter, jam, and did you know, cocoa pulp juice. Ackee is Jamaica's rice. Ackee is Jamaica's third most sought after crop. The growing diaspora longs for the taste of home. Jamaicans are now in the far corners of the world. Imagine if we invest in high value crops, cementing home not accepted wherever they grow through government partnerships with private sector entities. Since foreign exchange will increase, the GDP and the GNP will also increase. Do Business Jamaica has noted Ackee to have earned us $25 million from exports, according to reports from Statin in 2022. The fruit goes well across several parishes, mainly St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, and Clarendon. And just an initial investment of $38,000 is required to establish a 1,000-acre property. Harvested primarily in the second year, Ackee finds ready markets in Canada, Grand Cayman, St. Martin, the UK, the US not accepted. These products are ready with Ackee, Ackee Patty, and frozen vacuum-packed Ackee adding value. Focused investments now can lead our crops to being available in Japan, Spain, Colombia, India. The world is our oyster as we carve a space to be seen uniquely Jamaican. Investment in high-value crops will build a resilient agricultural sector, fortified against the effects of climate change, boosting the morale of current and prospective farmers. We understand that climate change is a real and live issue faced by the agricultural sector. However, our investment policy ensures that threats posed by climate change are effectively responded to. This is through technological advancements and upgrades such as implementing different farm management practices and markets and infrastructural development. We will also implement strong insurance policies, providing a further buffer against any unforeseen circumstances, ensuring the land and the workers are compensated. We will implement import retention and storage initiatives as further buffers against the effects of war. We will expand education and sensitization with partnerships with National Irrigation Commission and RADA. We have already seen climate-resilient coffee coming in 2026. So imagine what will happen when we focus our investments to what matters. Farmers and communities are uplifted as high-value crops result in higher income potential, greater market stability, and stronger long-term opportunities. If we concentrate our efforts, another branch will emerge as we are able to hone in on building a resilient Jamaica, weathering the storms. In conclusion, the sun's rays do not burn unless it is brought into focus. Prioritization of high-value crops yield exceptional outcomes for the Jamaican society. The government must decide. My second speaker will highlight the dangers of diversification and expand on the benefits of prioritization. I thank you.
We thank you for that opening presentation. That's the first proposition speaker. We now call upon the first opposition speaker to open the case on behalf of the Ministry of Health and Wellness's team. Hear, hear.
Honorable Chair, esteemed adjudicators, worthy opponents, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Jamaica's agriculture cannot survive on putting all our eggs in a one basket. Because when one hurricane passes through, ladies and gentlemen, when one drought hits, when one export market crashes, and when one crop disease spread, it's not just crops that suffer here, ladies and gentlemen. It's farmers, it's families, it's food security, it is the Jamaican economy. And that is exactly why Team Opposition firmly rejects today's moot. The role of the government is not merely to chase profits, but it is to build resilience, sustainability, national development, and economic security for all Jamaicans. And that cannot happen through overdependence on a few export crops, though they may be high value. Now, ladies and gentlemen, today Team Opposition will prove that prioritizing a diversified agricultural sector is the smarter, safer, and more sustainable public sector investment for Jamaica. Now, before we proceed, let us highlight a particular key term in the moot according to Cambridge Dictionary that my opponents may have omitted from their definitions. Now, diversified means investing across many different areas rather than depending on one. That is important to note in this moot. Therefore, when team opposition speaks about a diversified agricultural sector, DAS or DAS that you may hear saying, we are referring to government investment across food crops, including high value crops, livestock, fisheries, climate resilient farming, agro-processing, and agro-tourism. And let us make it abundantly clear, ladies and gentlemen, from the outset, we are not saying that high value crops are bad. We're not saying they're worthless. Coffee, cocoa, banana, and sugar that I wish to add to your crops that you're looking at, they have played historic roles in Jamaica's economy. What we reject is the dangerous idea that government should prioritize them above everything else, because prioritization, ladies and gentlemen, means putting in majority of resources, policies, subsidies, research, and infrastructure into one direction, such as the 80-20 policy our proposition would have put forward. And in a country not accepted at this moment, and a country like Jamaica, that is simply reckless public policy. Now, before I proceed into my argument, I want to dismantle just a few claims from the proposition. Now, proposition would have said to us that government resources are limited, so we should invest where profits are highest. But government investment should prioritize national stability, not simply the highest immediate return. Agriculture is not just a business sector here, ladies and gentlemen. It is tied directly to national food supply, employment, public health, disaster resilience, rural development. Government must invest for resilience and not just for revenue. Our proposition would have also said to us, ladies and gentlemen, not accepted at this time, high value crops bring more money and foreign exchange. But Honorable House, earning foreign exchange means very little if Jamaica simultaneously becomes more dependent on imported food. A country cannot claim agricultural success while importing basic food items its citizens rely on daily. Foreign exchange cannot feed a nation during a crisis. Now, Honorable House, as first speaker for the opposition, I will plant in your minds why diversification better protects Jamaica's economy, food security, and agricultural sustainability. Thereafter, my second speaker will water it with why diversification is key for climate resilience, food sovereignty, and stronger tourism linkages. And my third speaker will reap with you by solidifying our points. Now let me get into it. Jamaica, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the Caribbean. Not true, she said. Every year we face hurricanes, droughts, flooding, landslide, pests, and just rising temperature. Right now, El Nino effect is happening. The place that get hot, right? Now imagine if the majority of government investment is tied up in only a few crops. Ladies and gentlemen, one disease outbreak, not accepted. One category 4 hurricane, one international market decline, and suddenly thousands of farmers lose income overnight. We have seen this before. Hurricane Melissa happened the other day. But most importantly, the banana industry was devastated by Hurricane Gilbert and later by international trade changes. Coffee farmers continue to suffer from drought and coffee leaf rust. Sugar production has repeatedly declined because of the change in global markets and operational instability. This is precisely why overdependence is dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. A diversified agriculture sector, it spreads the risk. Different crops respond differently to weather conditions, different industries recover at different speeds, different revenues stream protect the economy. If one area suffers, thankfully through DAS, another one can stabilize the country. This is what a smart government does, you know, because as a public sector, we must ask ourselves, should government investment protect the economy from collapse, or should we gamble it on a few crops? Government must think about national stability, and diversification does exactly that. A diversified sector means more food for local consumption, more fishes, more agro-processing, and more income opportunities across rural Jamaica. So when crisis come, and in Jamaica, crisis come, the nation is not left vulnerable. And Honorable House, diversification is a priority here. Members of the House, Jamaica has a serious problem. Too often, we export raw products and import finished products back at higher prices. To me, that's not development. To me, that is our dependency with extra steps. A diversified agriculture sector changes that because it creates value-added opportunities. Instead of simply exporting these crops, we process, we manufacture, we package, we market, we build industries around them. And that in and of itself creates jobs beyond farming alone. We're looking at processors, marketers, manufacturers, tourism operators, entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs. Every year, ladies and gentlemen, Jamaica experiences gluts, especially with tomatoes. Who come to you? Irish potatoes and other produce. Farmers are forced to dump crops because supply exceeds demand. And what does that tell us here? It tells us that the issue is not production alone. It tells us that the issue is a lack of diversification in how we use our agricultural products. Because with stronger agro-processing investment, excess tomato can become ketchup, sauces, dry season, canned products. And instead of waste, ladies and gentlemen, we look at wealth. Because government investment diversification creates economic multiplication across the country. Not just one crop, not just one industry, but in and of itself, a value chain. And diversification in and of itself expands agrotourism. So we're looking at Appleton Estate, coffee tours in Blue Mountains, farm-to-table experiences, and agricultural festivals. Mr. Speaker, monoculture farming, the over-reliance of a single crop production, places enormous pressure on land and water resources. A diversified agricultural sector encourages more sustainable practices such as intercropping, aquaculture, mariculture, crop rotation, and climate-smart agriculture. This not only protects the environment, but ensures future generations can continue farming productively. And members of the House, what sense does it make to prioritize short-term export gains, though it may be high, while destroying the very land we depend on? That, to me, is exploitation. So in closing, Honorable House, the proposition asks Jamaica to gamble its agricultural future on a narrow economic strategy. Team opposition believes that government investment must do more than maximize export, and therefore, Honorable House, we firmly oppose this motion.
We thank the first opposition speaker for her address and now move to the first segment of cross-examination. In this segment, the opposition team gets a chance to ask 3 questions of the proposition team. Each question is limited to 10 seconds. Each response limited to 45 seconds. Let's get it started. At this time, I call upon the opposition team to pose their 3 questions.
Thank you so much. The proposition speak about export and foreign exchange, but what we want to know, per se, how does relying on export reduces food import in the agricultural sector?
Mr. Speaker, sorry, my opponents, the burden of the motion asks us where would we place our investment to yield high returns. And so we're saying we're placing our investment in our export sector because, Mr. Speaker, we know that we already are importing the US $1.38 billion in goods. The difference now is that we cannot afford to invest it because what our opponents fail to say is that what obtains in the status quo now is diversification, and what we have not obtained is food security. So do not be misled. So what we are saying now is let us be able to afford to import. Let us grow our export market. Let us invest in these high-value crops where we can yield high returns on our investment. Let's go. Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much, team proposition. So help us to understand how is the current configuration of Jamaica's agricultural sector able to compete against countries like Brazil and America?
My opponents, remember, brand Jamaica. Right now, we're diversified, so of course we cannot compete. What we're simply saying is to focus concentrated efforts. We will build a sustainable, suitable future for our economy in a way that we become a superpower in the market.
Because, Mr. Speaker, what obtains is that if it is that we have $5 million, when we spend $5 million across 10 crops, that 500,000, if we were to spread 5 million across 5 crops, that is $1 million per crop. And that is what we're saying. When we invest like that, the return is higher. We are more competitive in the global value chain. So our opponent is right. We're not competitive right now because we're putting little everywhere. We're not optimizing on anything.
I think you know better than that, my word proponents, but help us to also understand, didn't Jamaica have an intensive commercial system for agriculture, especially for banana and sugarcane in the past? And what would you do differently?
Oh, my opponents, our policy did say exactly what we do differently, so we have no problem explaining it to you.
As I said, we will increase our technological advancements, our education, our partnerships with both private sector and what already exists with the ministries. So we build from the future, we build from the past, and we build for the future.
And with these technological advancements, my opponents, with the world is already looking to combat these problems like climate-resistant coffee. So we know that there is a climate problem in terms of how coffee is grown. So because of the technological advancement and the way in which the world is moving, we are able to indeed come back from these crises quite quicker. And what Team Proposition is saying, let us come back from 5 plants instead of 20 plants, because that makes economic sense. Right? And that...
The power of the bell. All right, thank you very much for that period of cross-examination. We continue now with the questions coming to us from the proposition team to the opposition team.
Okay. My opponents, how does the opposition propose government adequately finance multiple agricultural sectors without reducing efficiency and impact?
All right, thank you for that question. The answer is pretty simple. So what we have now is a system that sees food coming from the farms to the boat, or from the farms to the plate. What we are proposing is the addition of value to that supply chain with industries. So it's industrialization that will actually earn and secure. When we have gluts on the market, it's because we have not industrialized to the extent where storage is possible. So what we are proposing is adding value to the chain. Value to the chain, greenhouse, less land space needed for a whole heap more products, whole heap more output from the system. So that is how we would diversify with technology, industrialization, adding value along the chain.
My opponents, with the current system that you are proposing, how exactly do you plan to support your development and expansion with our limited resources and limited land to do so? How do you plan to support your development and expansion with limited resources and or limited arable land to do so?
Right, so as was said earlier, so the limited availability of arable lands is negligible if it is that you are incorporating technology in the chain. So remember I was saying that if you have a greenhouse that can perhaps, a small quarter-acre greenhouse, can produce the yield that you would get from 5 acres of land. So if you're adding technology, if a greenhouse, for example, is being used to add value to that chain, and you are ensuring also, because you said that we have limited resources, but that's not particularly true.
Also want to pinpoint as well that diversification does not mean random and inefficient investment. It also means strategic investment across multiple agricultural areas to not only reduce risk but also to strengthen resilience, because we're looking at the agricultural sector and not just the profit generating part of it.
My opponents, based on your greenhouse analogy, we're putting it to you that would it not make more sense if you were to plant high-value crops in those same greenhouse, which will in turn increase your investment and returns?
I just want to say no, because agriculture in and of itself, again, is not only about revenue, it's about food security, it's about national resilience, it's about rural livelihoods, it's about climate protection. And a country that earns export money but cannot feed its people is a vulnerable country. And government investment must protect long-term national stability, not just short-term profit. I think while we're looking at the concept of investment, we're looking at only investing and reaping rewards in a financial standpoint, but you also have to remember that it's a national duty to protect its people. So we're looking at national stability as well. It's not just about money over here.
All right, wow. Thank you to both teams for this phase of cross-examination. We continue now with the second speaker from the proposing team, stepping forward to advance the proposition's case. Hear, hear.
All protocols observed. The opposition claims prioritization is dangerous. They hear prioritize and imagine scorched earth. However, prioritization does not mean exclusion. It means strategic focus. And in a country with limited capital and fiscal space, strategy matters. Prioritizing matters. Opposition's model of diversification creates a weaker, more fragile agricultural sector, spreading Jamaica's limited capacity too thinly. It trades focus for fragmentation, making us vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, agriculture requires technical expertise, research, disease control, climate adaptation, and market development. That takes concentrated institutional capacity, and Jamaica does not have it in abundance. The numbers show it. Currently, the government has allocated $249 million $249 million for agriculture, not at this time, for agricultural resilience and coastal protection, and $406 million for rehabilitating research centers. That's roughly $4.2 million. Spread that across 30 crops, 14 parishes, and multiple export chains, and you are spending pennies per priority.
Point of information.
Not at this time, my opponent. You cannot modernize 30 crops at once and expect global competitiveness. The failures are clear: weak support, poor financing, and fragmented markets. Despite decades of diversification, Jamaica still imports $1.38 billion in food. Countries that tried broad diversification have seen volatility and decline. When Hurricane Beryl hit, coffee farms lost 60% of crops and $200 million because there was no backup or insurance. This is a vulnerable sector starved of infrastructure. Jamaica's traditional export crops fell 23.5%, largely due to Hurricane Beryl. When resources are spread too thin, one shock knocks out multiple sectors at once. Our proposition solidifies a resilient future. Not at this point. Proposition posits that high-value crops will build institutional competence, train extension officers, invest in integrated pest and disease management, negotiate market access and branding. Modern agriculture requires participating in sophisticated global chains. Colombia didn't dominate coffee by growing 30 crops. Ghana didn't build a cocoa economy by splitting resources with 20 other crops. They leveraged competitive advantage, harnessing expertise, infrastructure, and branding. Build a strong economic anchor first, and then we can leverage to support broader agriculture later. On to my next substantive. Prioritizing in high-value crops does not destroy food security, and it does not mean abandoning diversified agriculture or food production. The motion calls for prioritization, not exclusivity. Domestic crops like yam, callaloo, vegetables remain, but major investments, modernization, and infrastructure should target high-value crops that transform the economy. Wealthier farmers earning from premium exports reinvest, withstand climate shocks, and diversify. Poor farmers cannot reliably sustain themselves, let alone sustain food systems effectively. Economic empowerment builds resilience. Singapore imports over 90% of its food and still ranks globally #1 for food security. They built economic strength first, using high-value crops and trade to generate foreign exchange, needed to import food reliably and invest in food safety systems. Consider Taiwan, whose food self-sufficiency rate fell 89%, still maintaining food security through strategic imports, reserves, and a strong economy that can pay for food when needed. Neither country tried to grow everything. Their focus remains on wealth, not at this point, wealth generation, which they achieve by investing in high crops and using that wealth to secure food. The reality is that diversification has not solved food security concerns. Jamaica has not achieved food security under the current system, where food security means consistent access to safe, nutritious, and sufficient food for a healthy life. Proposition envisions an agricultural economy capable of financing broader food resilience. So we stand here today advocating for us to build the economic engine first, Because if the agricultural sector remains underfunded and unprofitable, nobody wins. Not farmers, not consumers, not Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, coffee and cocoa alone could create 20,000 jobs in parishes like St. Elizabeth, reducing urban migration and balancing the economy. Coffee exports alone could add $50 million US annually through quality branding and infrastructure, cutting costs, boosting climate resilience. We would not have another Hurricane Beryl or Melissa. Global demand for products to manage chronic illnesses such as cancer and diabetes is growing rapidly as consumers become more health-focused, health-conscious. Superfoods like coffee, cocoa, ginger are rapidly gaining attention for their health benefits. Jamaica is well positioned to capitalize on this emerging market for premium health-focused products. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica cannot afford to be a jack of all crops, master of none. Focus on our strengths first. Build real agricultural wealth, and that's how we secure food, jobs, and resilience. Jamaica at its finest exemplifies premium agriculture, and for those reasons, we proudly stand with the motion. Proposition passes.
We thank the proposition second speaker for her contributions and now invite the second opposition speaker to advance the opposition's case. Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, my esteemed colleagues and also my colleagues on team proposition, persons in the audience and also the one MOH team online, I greet you well. Now, there are so many things and there are so many ways within which team proposition has erred. And so my task is not only to show how diversification is the best economic strategy, but also to clarify many misconceptions as much as time will allow. Now, there is the perception that to be the jack of all trade and the master of none is where the adage stops. But oftentimes, the master of many is better than one who masters only one. So that's the continuation of that particular expression. Mr. Speaker, I want to also point out that in Jamaica we have an adage that says, one cocoa full basket. But what will team proposition do when them lose the basket? You know, Mr. Speaker, we want to propose today that a diversified, no thank you, a diversified system already exists in Jamaica. Our current agricultural system is so configured that many of our farmers, they farm in no greater than perhaps 5 hectares of land. We do not have an intensive system in Jamaica. We don't have commercial systems in Jamaica. So guess what, Mr. Speaker? What we'll find happening is that the large fields that Jamaica would need to do the concentration of farming that team proposition is proposing simply does not exist in Jamaica. So, Mr. Speaker, when we speak about concentration versus specialization, the point is clear that to do that sort of system, to have that system enacted in Jamaica, you must have the configuration agriculturally to support that system. Mr. Speaker, on the point of foreign exchange, and the team proposition has argued that the concentration will earn us foreign exchange. That's now something that we can easily refute. Now, Jamaica already has a diversified system, and Jamaica's diversified system, if we look at the import bill for Jamaica, 1.3 billion Jamaican dollars. And that 1.3, 60% of that import was serving the hospitality industry. So what that tells us is that 40% went to the local market. Jamaica has in its weakened state, diversified state, the capacity to secure the food, the food requirements of its nation, of the country. What that tells us, Jamaica, is that we already have, in its imperfect state, the diversified system to ensure that everybody can eat a food in Jamaica. No, thank you. Food security, Mr. Speaker, has been assured simply because the systems that we have are diversified and those systems have been working. What we are proposing, Mr. Speaker, is ensuring that along the supply chain that we have, we are adding value to that system with industry, with ensuring that we use the limited land effectively, with ensuring that we spend money in irrigation, in ensuring that we improve the roads that lead to these farms, in ensuring that infrastructure Mr. Speaker, is something that exists for the farms that are pierced across the island. If we are going to say to small farmers, Mr. Speaker, that we should shut down the farms because we want this land to plant cocoa, we want the land to plant coffee, what we are saying is that we are reinventing the old, failed model, colonial model, Mr. Speaker, of the past, where the lands in Jamaica were used commercially, industrially, in some instances, for sugarcane and for banana and all of these crops. What we are saying, Mr. Speaker, is that technology has allowed us to diversify the agricultural product, not just for crops, but also for livestock, also for industries where we can have dairy producers. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we have the capacity to expand the value chain, and that's what the team opposition is defending this afternoon. Adding value to the system by increasing the chain, the value of every step along that value chain. Mr. Speaker, I want to also mention the climatic reality that confronts Jamaica. And my first speaker would have alluded to the El Nino effect. Now, El Nino as a weather phenomenon has the capacity to destabilize weather systems, making it increasingly unpredictable. Now, I don't know of any system that exists, and perhaps team proposition can enlighten me. Which system do you know, Mr. Speaker? Can you tell me a system that you know about that can mitigate against natural phenomena? What do we do when we have category 5 and category 6 systems wiping across whole banana fields, coffee fields? The farmers, the coffee farmers in Jamaica. No, thank you. I'm so sorry. So, the coffee farmers here, they are struggling. Not so much so because these individuals have not received gracious investments and graciously have received loans from and grants from many multilateral organizations. What we find happening here is a simple system where the government has recognized that diversity is a better strategy than the system, than the whole idea of concentration, of specialization. That system has been used in the past and has been proven to be of none effect. We have learned, Mr. Speaker, that diversity is the strategy to move forward. We have learned that small ruminants, we have learned that when we look at livestock, when we talk about eggs and poultry, when we talk about increasing the policy framework that will ensure that the farmers can access loans, that farmers can access grants, that farmers can know that the industry can be bankrolled. So a farmer don't feel as if it's a liability to even think about expanding on the value that his produce can have. So, Mr. Speaker, I rest with the simple notion that when you have more, it's better than when you have one. Thank you.
We thank the second opposition speaker for his presentation. The debate now continues with the second segment of cross-examination. In this segment, the proposition team gets a chance first to ask their questions of the opposition team. Again, the rules are 10 seconds per question, 45 seconds per response. We now call upon the Administrator General's Department team, a proposition to pose their questions to the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
My opponents, if diversification is the superior strategy, why do so many successful agricultural economies still specialize in high-value exports?
Thank you so much for that question. Now, many successful countries actually combine strong export industries with diversified agricultural systems, ladies and gentlemen. So even the major agricultural economies diversify themselves because they understand the dangers of dependency and they understand the dangers of climate vulnerability. Jamaica, as a small island developing state, is even more vulnerable in this case and therefore needs diversification more urgently.
And if I may add, if time permits, you normally see specialization in larger countries, countries who can actually compete. Ivory Coast, Brazil, USA. These are the countries that use that sort of concentration model. Smaller countries don't rely solely on small concentration of crops to help them to compete economically. That doesn't exist.
My opponents, when a crisis comes, is it not more feasible to build back from 3 premium crops where you see high return than to build back from 25 crops?
Thank you so much. I think a question that we must ask ourselves actually is when crisis come, are we only going to rely on these 3 crops per se to mitigate this crisis? Or if we invest in diversification, when these 3 crops go down, do we have other crops there to support and sustain us? That is a serious question. Again, that's what we're looking at for diversification. We want to ensure that when one element of the agricultural sector fails, that there are other elements in the agricultural sector to keep us going. That's what we're saying again, that what we're looking at for us is sustainability and resilience in the agriculture sector and not solely just economic impact.
Okay, my opponent, so I guess the storm, so I guess the storm will damage some crops and not some.
But the question is that you say that the weak system right now is working for Jamaica, but what merits would you have for the coffee and cocoa farmers and all the diversified farmers that we have now that are crying for lack of assistance?
Again, let us remember that this is a debate. So let's just be, good debaters here. But just to answer your question, we are not saying to stop investing in coffee and cocoa entirely. We're not even saying that we should not be investing in these high-value crops. They're high-value crops. What we're saying is priority here. We're not saying that these crops are bad. We're saying that they should not be prioritized over diversification. There's a difference between supporting high-value crops, and there's a difference between heavily depending on them at the expense of a broader agricultural system.
And if I may quickly add that the challenge with the coffee farmers, you see, is because now the current configuration is from farm to boat. When value is added, which is what we're saying, diversification will allow us to add value. When we can add value to the supply chain by diversifying, then it will yield the value that we need.
All right, so we are grateful for this segment of cross-examination. It takes us now to the pause. We grant you 1 minute. Oh, sorry.
We have not answered our question.
My apologies. Wow. So deep into the debate, I became a little distracted. Apologies. All right, so we've heard the questions coming from the proposition side to the opposition. We now invite the opposition to pose their 3 questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want the team in proposing team to just help us to understand what working definition we're using for diversity. How much crop qualifies for a diverse system versus a monocrop system?
Well, I mean, as we said in our speech, to diversify is simply to increase the variety of products, and our model initiates 80 to 20%, so we don't necessarily have a quantity.
In addition to that, diversity can be anywhere with about 5+ crops. In the motion, it gave us the example of cocoa, coffee, and banana, and we have also incorporated another high-value crop like ackee, where we've seen the market for, ginger, where we've seen the market for, and my opponent cannot scissor their way in. That is not broad diversification. That is still concentration. As we're saying, we're looking at 4 crops instead of 20 crops. We're not putting one cocoa in basket, because when we lose the baskets, they're coming back.
All right, so one of the things that we had touched on was disease control. You guys have not answered how your system would address disease.
My opponent, in our prioritization, we intend to have integrated pest and disease management, which means in planting natural crops that will support and which will support and protect, and also provide other methods.
And that is something that is currently being practiced in today's day and age, where you plant these high-value crops, right? But you still plant crops near them, and those crops does 2 things. It serves as natural pesticide and insecticide to help these high-value plants grow and thrive, and it is also an additional source. So technically, 2 birds, 1 stone.
All focused on high-value crops.
Thank you so much. My proposition, our final question for you, because a part of the contribution to these crops yielding is farmers, especially at the small level. If we continue to invest in these particular crops, what will happen to our small farmers? How will they survive should international prices fall?
Mentioned that because our policy did talk about farmers. We said that wealthy farmers are more resilient farmers. We said that when farmers plant these high value crops, they are more competitive on the export market. We said put them in a better position because my opponent, we're planning for a crisis, yes, but we cannot stop a crisis. So when a crisis comes, what we need to be is prepared. And how we become prepared? We become financially secure. How we become prepared? We achieve a food security. So my opponent, that is indeed what we're saying. We are accounting for the 2,500 farmers with less than 5 acres of land. We're directly and indirectly incentivizing these farmers. We're telling these farmers to plant these high-value crops because the return is a lot and you're getting more money for your family and you need more money for security and stability.
Thank you. Thanks to both teams for the segment of cross-examination that just ensued. We are now going to take the 1 minute pause. So teams, your 1 minute begins now. I hope you made good use of the 1 minute pause because it has just expired. Teams, we are ready to resume. At this time, I call upon the third speaker from the opposition team representing the Ministry of Health and Wellness to conclude the team's case. Hear, hear.
All right. So, Mr. Speaker, members of the panel, audience, and my fellow opponents, good afternoon. As the reply speaker for Team Opposition, I am not here to introduce new arguments. Instead, I am here to evaluate this debate and to explain why Team Opposition has clearly won this moot. At its core, this debate comes down to one central question. What kind of agricultural strategy will best protect and strengthen Jamaica's future? Throughout this debate, we have acknowledged the value of high-value crops to Jamaica's agricultural sector. However, we have contended that a diversified agricultural sector would bring greater resilience, food security, economic stability, and long-term sustainability. On the other hand, Team Proper sold us a future where agriculture is primarily an export business. Meanwhile, we have framed it as a national system. And that, Mr. Speaker, is why we have won this debate. So I will now identify some of the clashes that came out of this match. Cool. So the first clash. You guys say that high-value crops, it gives us a high returns, and therefore we need to keep it going. And we agree. However, with this 80% focus, this 80% focus on high-value crops in the face of geopolitics, which you failed to talk about, right now we are seeing it live with gas prices. And we've seen it in the past, as my second speaker had mentioned. To gamble on high-value crops is to gamble on people's livelihood, to gamble on the farmers' ability to earn and feed themselves, right? It also gambles on our money that we can earn, right? So then now we go into Clash 2. Oh, wait, also, you also mentioned about, when we spoke about what about the smaller scale farmers, to which you answered about wealthy farmers. And every farmer have money. So what about the farmers who are not so wealthy? What does resilience look like for them? We wait. Clash 2, you say we need food security, and I agree, but my question is food security for who? To prioritize a high-value crop model, you are giving food security to our export market. You have failed to address the food security for our local market. What about what people see there? We have tomato our waste, lettuce our waste, the glut. You then go to talk about agro-processing with respect to high-value crops. Are you saying agro-processing with respect to the crops that go to waste does not matter? Are you saying we should continue to waste the food that we have so much farmers grinding and working in the hot sun to prepare? Come on, my opponents, you are now, where is the food security in that? Additionally, you failed to address the importance of using the economic engine that we have. You say high-value crops give us the money, and we agree. What we are saying is, let us take that money and fund a diversified agricultural sector. Instead, you would rather maintain that system and squander an opportunity for higher rewards and a greater yield for economic excellence. Because once again, as we say, in the face of war, disease, you touched on disease, as we also said as well. In our diversified agricultural sector, it includes all the things that you're saying and so much more. Because we are not looking just at export, we are looking beyond. We are looking at long-term sustainability. We are looking at earning our rewards over time, right? We're not just talking about the farm to board. Them days are done. We need to go beyond. Jamaica is facing so much economic risk and shocks. It's time for us to use our resources and maximize on our benefits. I thank you.
We thank you very much for concluding the opposition's case, and now invite to conclude the proposition's case, the third speaker, the reply speaker from the proposition side. Of course, the proposition team is the Administrator General's Department, AGD.
All protocols observed. Mr. Speaker, I think by this team proposition and team opposition are on the same page, because the opposition third speaker just said that we should take the money from high investment and then use it to diversify. Very well, that is what we're saying. So also, that would simply mean, Mr. Speaker, that we have to do the high investment first and then diversify. So yeah, we're on the same page. Mr. Speaker, proper preparation prevents poor performance. The principle that obtains is that if we do what we've always done, we'll get what we've always gotten. Let me make one thing crystal clear. Side proposition has never rejected diversification. We reject not prioritizing investment in high-value crops over diversification, thus weakening the agricultural sector. Mr. Speaker, the major clash in this debate talks about where we will put the money, the investment. Would it be in the high-value crops or in diversification? Mr. Speaker brought us from team opposition is nothing exclusive, nothing that our policy didn't account for. We accounted for the jobs, we accounted for the climate change, we accounted for technological differences and how it is that we are moving in a digital age. Mr. Speaker, the first speaker of team opposition came up here and hinged their argument on food security, but be not misled. Where we are now is at food insecurity. What we're doing now is mostly diversifying. What we are saying is that we must do something different, and we're saying there is not one path to food security. Why is our opposition so unwilling to explore other paths? The path that we have put forward is investing investing in these high value crops so that we can have high return. And with this high return and the investment in our economy, we are able to do like other countries and afford said food security. Mr. Speaker, the second speaker from Team Opposition came up here and essentially told us that one cocoa, you put one cocoa in different basket because you can't put all your cocos in one basket. But I put it to you is that if 3 baskets of high value crops wash away, it's easy to reinvest and earn from those than if one cocoa in a 20 basket wash away. And those 20 baskets didn't even value what the 3 basket valued. Let's go. Mr. Speaker, my opponents, again, have not given us anything different. And my opponent says that Jamaica has enough can eat of food. That is how I know that my opponent has not properly grasped the notion. Because, Mr. Speaker, when we make an investment, we're not just trying to eat a food. That is small-minded. What we're trying to do is to improve the GDP and the GNP and ensure that we can afford food security. Mr. Speaker, the side proposition would have had this debate won when we laid irrefutable arguments, right? My first speaker laid out Jamaica's reality and said that farming remains largely subsistent and we have not achieved food security, and our current do a little of everything leave farmers exposed to pests, climate shock, and poor market return. Mr. Speaker, that is not resilience. No one can deny the benefits of investing in high-value crops. Crops like Blue Mountain coffee, cocoa, ginger, and ackee deliver significantly greater returns per acre, higher export values, and a real opportunity for value-added production. Again, this is what the government has already accounted for, nothing mutually exclusive to Team Opposition. Mr. Speaker, currently, the reason why we have lost ground on the global market is because of the present approach. Prioritizing these crops directly increase foreign exchange, earning and boosting GDP and GNP. Mr. Speaker, we're also not leaving our farmers defenseless. We are putting safeguards in place to ensure that our policy has airtight measure that protects farmers through direct and indirect incentive to make agriculture more attractive to the small and big farmer, to the present and prospective farmer. Mr. Speaker, our second speaker argued that postulate that diversity sounded safe in theory, but in reality, it makes our sector volatile and Jamaica vulnerable. We spread a $406 million budget that produced no crop or produced performing optimally and globally. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica already faces food security under the current model. Taiwan and Singapore have showed us the way. They have capitalized on premium export, then reinvest in food storage, import capacity, and farmer support. We are not abandoning our farmers. We're not abandoning food protection. Finally, Mr. Speaker, CM planting, CM meager harvest. We have to stop scattering our millions across too many crops and plant them in high-value soil where we reap foreign exchange, GDP growth, and finally achieve the food security we so yearn. Team Proposition rest.
Thank you very much, Cudian King, the third speaker from the proposition team, for those final remarks. At this time, I turn over to the moderator to conclude this segment.
Thank you so much, Jermaine. Diversification versus concentration. Very compelling and spirited arguments. Give the teams another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so very much. What side are you for or against the mood? Be it resolved that the government should prioritize investment in high-value crops. Example, coffee, cocoa, and banana over investment in a more diversified agricultural sector. Let us know what side you are on, ladies and gentlemen. The arguments have been made. And the final thing is for the judges to take a short break, adjudicate, and come back with the results of this match. Please stay tuned. We will be right back.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the wrapping up segment of the match that just ensued. It featured the Administrator General's Department going up against the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and they contested the moot as to whether we should invest in, or the Jamaican government rather, should invest in high-value crops. We got examples of those, and of course, as opposed to a diversified agricultural sector. Now, the argument from Team Proposition, the strongest argument from Proposition, is that the government of Jamaica lacks resources. And it's in that context that the government must invest strategically to unearth and to extract the greatest value financially and in terms of earnings that it can get from its investment, its return on investment. They say that this is best achieved if we prioritize investments in high-value crops, in as much as there is a demand in the international community for these crops. So we'll earn a lot more, and as the team case went on, we understood that a lot of this greater earning can be used to compensate for losses with respect to the diversified sector of agriculture. Team opposition rather contends that financial earnings is a myopic view if it is that is all that you're prioritizing overall. They say that food sustainability is an important factor to be considered, and they contend that food sustainability is lost in government's world, in Proposition's world. Now let's assess how we weigh this. Within that Proposition does a bit of preemptive work to sort of push against the idea of food sustainability, insofar as they point to examples like Taiwan and Singapore that don't have a diversified agricultural sector, but use whatever revenue they earn from whatever high-valued crops that they export, and they use that to offset the costs that would incur from the reduced availability of a diverse range of food and agricultural produce. Another thing of note that was interesting to us is the wayside opposition seeks to improve on the diversified arrangement that exists right now in agriculture in the Jamaican context. I think they anticipate that there's some amount of challenge forthcoming even before it came from side Proposition, which is to say Jamaica imports a significant amount relative to the availability of foods that are existent within the local economy. 1.3 billion US dollars is the figure highlighted by the Proposition team. And of course, they say if this is what unfolds, or this is what reflects in a world where we diversify, then there's not much to celebrate, if you will. Side opposition recognizes that and strategically tries to improve on that. So in their world, diversification entails the utilization of technologies, greenhouse technologies, aquaponics, or culture, rather, and other such mechanisms to improve the productivity of the diversified sector. Now, when we get this idea, we needed to understand from side opposition to what extent will productivity increase, to what extent will Jamaica be better able to feed itself and thus be less reliant on imported foods. To what extent will Jamaica therefore serve a greater proportion of the food consumed within tourism? We're not exactly sure. We think that there's some improvement, but we don't know how to weigh that improvement relative to the improvement that are to be had in the world of side government or Proposition. Another question that we think reflects some amount of symmetry in this debate has to do with the impact of climatic realities that are so very pervasive in our context. So hurricanes. When a hurricane comes, is it reasonable for us to better anticipate improvement or rehabilitation of an agricultural sector when there are effectively 3 or 4, maybe 5 high-valued crops that need now to be replanted? Or is it more demanding for us to rehabilitate more crops? We think on that level, there's likely to be, the fact that the hurricane does not really discriminate. Hurricanes are such that they wipe out everything. Be it whatever is available, whatever is in its path is likely to be wiped out. we're unsure as to what then is the greater resource needed to rehabilitate 10 crops as opposed to 5 crops. We think that a meaningful conversation ought to have been had, but unfortunately was not had with respect to other detriments to agriculture, like, for example, diseases. When it is that a crop is impacted by diseases, is that crop likely to be easier replaced and substituted for? When it is that there are other crops that can be relied upon to meet the demand that is no longer served within the domestic market by that particular crop. Ultimately, we think that that kind of conversation was lacking, and the limitation in this debate had to do too much with a reliance on argumentation surrounding the climatic factors that impair agriculture in either world. Now, we think that the debate really took a decisive turn near the end. We appreciate the arguments from the third speaker on side proposition when she pointed out that it's the earnings from the investments in high-valued crops that will be able to be used to import the crops that are not currently existent within the Jamaican market, and also importantly will ultimately be used to encourage greater diversification. We think that's an important point. A point, though, that we wish had come up earlier in the debate so that there could have been a bit more meaningful interrogation of such an idea, right? So we can see whether or not the trade-off is worthwhile. Nevertheless, we think that it is to the credit of Team Proposition for having sort of mitigated a lot of the harm with respect to the losses that are had when it is that we no longer have as great an amount of a diversified range of crops and are reliant on a kind of a near monoculture kind of experience. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of the harms that exist, be it in terms of the environment and climate change and so forth, or diseases, needed to have been quantified. So we appreciate side opposition telling us that Jamaica is incredibly vulnerable relative to other countries in the world. We appreciate that. What we needed to understand, though, is to what extent does this vulnerability make it more harmful and more risky for us to take the approach being advocated for by side proposition versus the side that's been advocated for by side opposition. Insofar as a lot of the detriments, a lot of the harms exist in both worlds. So there was a bit of a deadlock that wasn't quite broken by either team in this debate, and it made our jobs as a panel of adjudicators that much more difficult. The scores, ladies and gentlemen, in the final analysis: 276 points as compared to 271 points. So far in the competition, in the octafinals round, this is a relatively low-scoring match. The winners of this match, the octafinal round of the public sector debate competition for 2026, ladies and gentlemen, the proposition team, Administrator General's Department. A round of applause, please. And so we appreciate the contributions of both teams, and we want to extend commendations on a job well done by the opposition team, the Ministry of Health and Wellness. There were two fairly strong debaters in this match, one being the opposition leader, the other being the third speaker, the reply speaker on Team Proposition. The better of the two debaters, and thus the best debater in this match, ladies and gentlemen, the reply speaker from Team Proposition. Thank you very much for tuning in and for sharing this space with us. We have one more match to go as we continue the octafinals round of this competition. Thank you all. Stay tuned.